Hello, welcome to Only in Illinois, your weekly recap from Reboot Illinois. I'm Madeline Dubeck here with Matt Dietrich, and this week we had yet another Illinois shattering decision from the Illinois Supreme Court. Not surprising particularly, but certainly depressing for a lot of citizens who had signed a petition to try to get a chance to vote for redistricting reform.
Right.
Of course, I'm talking about the Illinois Supreme Court decision 4-3 on party lines
Right.
to reject the second consecutive attempt to allow for a more independent map-making process.
Yep.
The Auditor General apparently can't be involved in helping pick the independent commissioners who would draw the maps.
Yeah.
Is that the essence of the...
Whenever this comes up, it's always a hard thing to explain. And you have to start, I won't go into what redistricting reform is. I hope if you're watching this, you probably know about gerrymandering and that politicians in Illinois right now draw their own Senate and House maps.
Right.
It's very advantageous to the party who gets to draw that map.
Right.
And the Illinois Constitution, this is another thing you have to understand, is very restrictive on what citizens can do to change the Constitution. Illinois is not like California, where every other week you have some citizen initiative.
Ballot initiative
Yeah,
number 567.
The Illinois Constitution says that if citizens want to initiate changing the Constitution, the thing that they're changing has to address the structure and function of the Illinois General Assembly. That's all you can do. You can't go out and collect signatures to legalize marijuana or to create a progressive income tax system or change the speed limit or anything else like that. You can't even do it to impose term limits. We learned that 2 years ago, that term limits is not something that citizens are eligible to initiate a constitutional amendment about. And what we found in the decision this week
Yes.
was that the most recent effort to get redistricting reform on the ballot in November before voters went beyond that limitation. And what the court wrote essentially was that because the state auditor general, who is not part of the General Assembly, had a role in the independent commission that the independent map amendment was trying to create, because this non-General Assembly member, whose duties are defined outside the one portion of the Constitution that citizens can change, that means the whole thing is invalid and it's not eligible to appear on the ballot on November 8th.
Even though it's the legislature who chooses the Auditor General.
Well, true. and usually, well, not usually, but currently we have a legislator, former legislator, who was
Right.
chosen to be Auditor General.
Frank Martino.
Now,
So, I mean, people out there watching want to know,
what happens next?
no,
Now what can they do?
what else what other possibility is there, or should I just
Okay.
pack up my bags and move to another state
All
right now?
This decision, and we've got it on our website, we've got the whole thing on our
Right.
website. But the decision closed the door for this November 8th election. This amendment's not going to be there for voters because the State Board of Elections has to certify the ballot, I think, Friday the 26th was the date, and this ruling came out on the 25th. And so you're not going to see it then. But while the Supreme Court closed the door for this year, it didn't exactly slam it. Left it open and basically said in a couple of different places that if the Auditor General wasn't involved, we might have a different decision on this. And it went out of its way also, it was Justice Thomas Kilbride who wrote the decision, said, we are not stating here that redistricting reform is off limits for a citizen initiative. It's just that you can't have someone who is defined outside of the one section of the Constitution that citizens are allowed to change, can't be on there. So there is a little crack still open. Now, that's not a great thing, because what you also need to understand is that even getting to this point, what the independent map amendment did to this point was a tremendous, arduous process. You have to have valid voter signatures from 8% of the number of citizens who voted in the previous gubernatorial election. That was almost 3,100 signatures that they had to have minimum. They collected twice that many.
Right.
And that's how the Board of Elections said, you are legal as far as we're concerned, you're ready to be on the ballot. That's when we got into court and they lost the lower court decision in Cook County, ended up before the Supreme Court.
But back to the question of what can citizens who want to see this happen, who believe in their heart of hearts that this whole process is rigged and corrupt, what can they do?
They can pressure their lawmakers because the General Assembly can change whatever they want in the Constitution. All it takes for the General Assembly to put an amendment on the ballot is 3/5 of the members of the House and the Senate have to vote for it.
Which they both did.
Well, what happened?
A different version of this spring.
What happened in the spring was the House voted on one.
Each chamber
the
passed
Senate
a different
voted on
version,
another.
and they never passed the same version to the governor.
This is what Governor Rauner has been out there barnstorming all summer long.
Right.
His message has been, come on lawmakers, you know the people want this. 600,000 people signed the petition, for crying out loud. This will put confidence back into the political process. And Governor Rauner wants lawmakers, when they come back to Springfield on November 15th, to take this issue up and pass it and get it ready to be on the 2018 ballot. Remember that redistricting reform wouldn't even come into play until 2021. That's when they'll draw the next map. That's after the 2020 census. So you could still put this on the ballot before voters, and if they approve it in 2018, then it would go into effect for the next map. So there's still a chance, and you could have another citizen initiative just like this one. It's expensive, it's a lot of hard work, but now it's been narrowed down. Now you've got guidance from the Supreme Court saying, if you do this again but don't involve the Auditor General, it might get past us. Of course, they don't say it will get past us, but at least it's a crack in the door.
Well, should we leave it on that hopeful note?
Well,
with a sliver of hope?
Let me throw in one last thing, because there's one other thing that everybody should understand when it comes to the way maps are drawn for Senate and House districts, and that is the Democrats. See, House Speaker Michael Madigan really despises this whole issue. He thinks that it's fair the way it is, and that's the way it should stay, which is why it's pretty certain that it's never going to be called before the General Assembly. However, you should understand that by doing this, Madigan's taken a gamble, because under the Illinois Constitution, what happens is a new map needs to be drawn after every census, and it's done basically the same way a bill is passed in the legislature. The House passes it, the Senate passes it, the two chambers pass it, they send it to the governor, and he either signs it or vetoes it. If you've got the House and the Senate and the governor's office controlled by the same party, as was the case in 2011, it's no problem, because they all agree. The Democrats want to draw that map, they draw it, the governor signs off on it, you're good to go. If say, the House is controlled by one of the other party, or if in this case we have a Republican governor and a Democratic legislature,
he can veto what they send him.
He can veto what they send him,
and then
the Constitution says, then you form an 8-member commission with 4 members from each party, and they work it out. Okay,
but they don't.
But they've never worked it out.
Because this is Illinois.
They've never worked it out.
And then what happens,
every time
Matt?
it's been tried, and then the Supreme Court decides 2 names to be placed in
Lincoln's hat.
It was in Lincoln's hat one year. One year it was in a crystal bowl, but 2 names are placed in there, one from each party, and whichever name is drawn by the Secretary of State, that person is added to the panel, and That's
There we have a majority of
and-
one party.
and therefore that party gets to draw the whole map. Whether and,
All or nothing.
and this is how in 1991 the
Right.
Republicans won the right to draw the map, and that map was historic because in the 89th General Assembly from 1995 to 97, those are the only 2 years since 1983 that Michael Madigan was not Speaker of the House. He
Okay.
was the
Speaker Lee Daniels.
right, and Madigan was the minority leader. Now that didn't last long. The
No.
Democrats took it back, and they've had it ever since '97. But that just
Even though
shows
the
you that-
Republicans had drawn the map.
right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So they
Uh,
didn't especially do it particularly.
Right, and then the
Good
Democrats got to draw the next two, and so now we've got super majorities of Democrats, arguably helped by friendly maps, and that's why this is important. Madigan's taking a gamble. If he doesn't do anything with this, and if Rauner gets reelected or some other Republican gets reelected governor, in 2021, you'll probably see another draw from a hat, and they'll go for broke, 50-50. It's a big prize, and that's why they fight for it.
All right. Well, we have to keep fighting for a better
Mhm.
Illinois.
You can
that-
pressure your lawmakers to vote on it.
and have them pressure Mike Madigan and John Cullerton, and we'll see what happens. Those are the options.
Mhm.
We'll leave it at that for this week. Thanks for tuning in. We'll see you on the next edition of Only in Illinois.